can Peter Parker die in Marvel's Spider-Man 2? Let's speculate. So it's a good time to be a Spider-Man fan. We got Spider-Man No Way Home. The trailer just recently dropped. We got No Way Home. And then on top of that, recently on the PlayStation Showcase, Insomniac debuted a trailer for Marvel's Spider-Man 2, which was the sequel that we all saw coming. We just didn't know exactly when Insomniac was ready to show pretty much anything, even a cinematic of this caliber, and we got it. And it was outstanding, it was riveting, it got us all feeling some type of way. But since the release of that trailer, I started to kind of ponder what the possibilities of the story could be for Marvel Spider-Man 2, and one of them would actually be Peter's demise in that sequel, being that now Peter hardly has anybody to really attach himself to. Sure, he's got MJ, it looks like they kind of fixed and patched up their issues at the end of the last game, and then we also of course have Miles Morales entering his corner of the universe with the Miles Morales spin-off that we got released on the PlayStation 4 and 5 last year. But could it be that the next step in Peter's evolution is to then pass officially the mantle for Miles to be the only Spider-Man, and therefore Peter giving his life for the greater good of either the population of New York or mankind as a whole? And I feel like there is speculation and possibility for that to happen, especially after kind of breaking down some of the clues inside of that trailer. As you guys remember from the trailer, it starts off with narration by what people are assuming is Kraven, then telling how since he's kind of gotten into the mix and jumped into the picture, no one has bested him. No one has actually given him the time of day when it comes to a formidable fight, a formidable foe for him to go up against, and no one's actually bested him, and ultimately it all led to, as he put it, disappointment. And as he narrates this, we get showcases of both Peter and Miles, assuming that the two of them weren't exactly the best opponents for him to fight. There was nothing, there was no thrill in that hunt, ultimately turning to Venom to see if he can provide some kind of respite to that. Considering that Kraven is gonna have a huge involvement in Marvel Spider-Man 2, we can then turn to a specific storyline in the comics that I think they could pull inspiration from, called Kraven's Last Hunt. Now, there are going to be some spoilers here for not just that comic line, but also mild spoilers for the end credit scenes of both Marvel Spider-Man from 2018 and the Miles Morales spin-off from last year, so you have been warned. And before we get into that spoilery territory, I do want to ask if you guys are huge Spider-Man fans and are looking forward to Marvel Spider-Man 2, drop down a like in the video below, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, that way I know that you guys are as stoked for Spider-Man 2 as much as I am. So without further ado, let's get into some details as to why Kraven's Last Hunt might actually be adapted into the next game. So in that original run for that comic book, Kraven actually bests Spider-Man even with the symbiote suit, shooting him and presumably killing him, and thus burying him to then kind of champion over the webslinger and declare himself the victor. In the process of doing so, he then becomes a little obsessed and dons the black costume, albeit at this point it's just a costume, it's not exactly the symbiote itself, but he then puts on the suit to then impersonate Spider-Man, going around the city, showing what he can do, and therefore kind of making his declaration that he is in fact better than Spider-Man, taking a huge amount of glee in doing so. Now, there is a slight wrinkle in this comic line that they may go in that route for the video games or not. It's really up to Insomniac, because if you guys have been playing the Insomniac games for the Spider-Man universe here that they've created, they have taken some liberties already. In the end credit scenes for those past two games, we then find out, and we get further details in the Miles Morales spin-off, that Harry Osborn is actually going to be our version of Venom in these games. He is actually sick with some kind of terminal illness, and it's revealed during the end credit scene of the first game that Norman Osborn has actually kept him in New York as opposed to sending him abroad for studying like he told his friends, and in doing so he has kept him alive in some kind of stasis position where the symbiote is actually the thing that's keeping him alive in this green tube, and it looks like that's going to be the origin for the Venom character in this corner of the universe. So it's not going to be the traditional Eddie Brock. So being that there is a much more emotional connection there, I feel like Peter is going to have to do a really huge sacrifice to not only save Harry, but also save the people that he loves in the process. And who best to save them from? Not just Harry while wearing the symbiote suit, but also Kraven himself. Kraven looks like he might just be the big baddie this time around, because maybe his obsession of getting that ultimate kill is not not going to stop him from doing the worst of the worst. And maybe in the second game, Kraven does in fact get the upper hand on Peter, seemingly kills him, and now it's up to Miles and maybe the venomized version of Harry to team up in either the third act, or I even dare say the third game, to then take on Kraven and finish everything once and for all. With that said, it's also possible that maybe Insomniac could take inspiration from the Kraven Last Hunt's storyline and incorporate it either into the third act or third game of this trilogy, because in that original line of comics, Spider-Man actually doesn't die. There is a little bit of a cop-out with that storyline. As Peter ultimately survives the poisonous dart that he was injected with by Kraven, digs himself literally out of his grave, and goes onwards to then find Kraven, deal with him, and also deal with his secondary adversary Vermin, who then Kraven enlists for help during this entire arc. So it's possible that maybe instead of Vermin, it's actually Venom that Kraven is going to and being like, hey, are you going to be able to give me what I desire? Just like he mentioned, guess what? In the trailer. And this could be a push that will then make Peter realize that after 6, or probably at this point 7 or 8, possibly even 10 whole years of being Spider-Man, it's time for him to retire. It's time for him to be like, hey, there is legitimately a successor to my mantle in the form of Miles Morales. Let him be the only genuine Spider-Man, give him the classic red and blue suit, and Peter then goes off into the sunset with Mary Jane, and all is happy. So maybe that could be a resolution for the trilogy, but it could also end up on a downer to say that, hey, Peter's ultimate responsibility with this power, as aforementioned, is to then give his life to make sure that the people that he cares about survive. And if that comes in the form of taking quite literally a bullet for the team, and thus empowering and encouraging Miles and the venomized version of Harry to do the right thing, especially with that emotional connection he has with his best friend Harry, then he must do so in a way to inspire them and then make them the playable characters and protagonists of the third game. But that is just one Spider-Man fan's opinion. Let me know your guys' in the comments below. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications if you guys want to show support for the channel, and if you guys want to stay tuned for any future Spider-Man or Batman related videos, because as you know, I am Dark Spider David, Dark for Batman, Spider for Spider-Man, and then David for everything else in between. And make sure to check out this video right here to see my full-length reaction to the Marvel Spider-Man 2 reveal trailer from the PlayStation Showcase. And until next time, guys, stay safe and stay humble.